Hi, this is Alejandro, your Spanish tutor. In today's video, I'm going to show you my approach to language learning. Let's start with the beginner level. What are the steps you have to take in order to become fluent? The first, sound and pronunciation. Then vocabulary, sentences, grammar, and lastly, the input method. Let's go over this one by one. Sounds and pronunciations, it's important to do it first at the start. This will make the entire process easier and more efficient in the long run. The first step is to go through the alphabet. Okay, this is very basic, but most people skip this, and it's important. After the alphabet, we have to dive deep into the particular sounds of the language. For English speakers, Spanish has 8 sounds that English doesn't. So it's important to train your mouth to produce these sounds and your ears to recognize these sounds. How do we do this? We do this through minimal pairs. These are words that differentiate each other only from one sound. We are going to do that through flashcards and Anki. You can see an example on the right. So, pero and perro. You will hear one of those, and you need to recognize which one it is. Aside from minimal pairs, we also have other techniques and other exercises that can help our pronunciation. One of these is shadowing, where you hear a sound and you try to repeat it. And also tongue twisters, which are not only fun, but are also very useful to get particular sounds right. Once we have grasped pronunciation, we can move to vocabulary. And in this step, it's very important to focus on the most frequent vocabulary first. And for that, we can start with a list of cognates. These are words that have the same origin in 2 languages and are very similar or even identical. And in Spanish and English, there are a lot of them. Then we move to a frequency list. I have one made by Fluent Forever, which is fantastic, with the 625 more frequent words in Spanish. We are going to work with that list for the first steps of our journey. To give you an idea, we're going to acquire 650 general words, which will come from the list, and then about 300 or 400 that are more specific to your interest. In total, we are aiming at acquiring 1,000 words at the beginning stage. With that foundation, we can move on to the next level of learning, which is intermediate. Sentences. Sentences are the tool of communication in language. Isolated words are useless. They are only useful if we put them in sentence. So we are going to take the list of frequency words and create sentences together with. We are going to also use particular situations like ordering in a restaurant or checking in a hotel, or use your hobbies or interest to create sentences that are relevant, natural, and that you can use in real life. Another way of exposing yourself to sentences and vocabulary is through role-playing. Again, in real-life situations of language, what we call situations of communication, we can practice a little bit of interactions to get you familiar with those sentences. We can also use a method called TPRS, which is teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling. To memorize all this vocabulary and sentences, we are going to take advantage of flashcards, specifically Anki. We're going to create numerous flashcards to expose yourself to this vocabulary and sentences in many ways. We're going to test your production, your recognition, and also your ability to use the words in context. Grammar for a beginner must be used carefully. It is not essential to have a deep knowledge of grammar and structure in order to get conversational. That's why it's better to avoid complex grammatical theory or linguistics at this stage, because it can be more demoralizing than it is useful. But some basic structure is important. Also, the basic structure we are going to learn is going to be learned in context. Again, using flashcards, sentences, pictures, but more importantly, we are going to take that grammar into the classroom and interact. With the input method, we are looking to expose you to the language in different ways. But you are at an early stage, so there is no much native content you can make use of. That's why it's important to go for content for kids, like little stories or animated videos. Those give you a lot of context and makes understanding the text or the audio a lot easier. Now we are at an intermediate stage. Let's start with conversation, then moving to grammar, and again to the input method. When it comes to conversation, it's important to understand that you are not ready yet to a spontaneous and complex conversation. So we should start with familiar and prepared exchanges, and moving slowly to a more difficult context. My priority is in our lessons that you talk 80% of the time. You should take every opportunity with a native speaker to express yourself and to put into use all these things you have been studying. Also, it's helpful if lists of vocabulary and videos go along with the topic of conversation to give it context. Conversation must also be a tool to expose yourself to grammar. So a particular grammar concept must be introduced or pay a special attention to and recognized during the conversation. Also, your partner must be able to correct you in the right way. I truly believe the silent way in which you allow the student or the speaker to recognize his own mistakes is the most effective approach for corrections. When you are intermediate, we are ready to study grammar in a more profound way. We will divide this approach in 3 steps. First one is the preparation. In this step, you watch videos, read theory in a textbook, and prepare your flashcard. In the next step, you practice with a tutor. Exercises designed to make you use the grammar concept in a real-life example. Lastly, you reinforce by going over the mistakes you made and the feedback you received during the lesson, and study the flashcards you created during the preparation. It's important to take a deductive approach to grammar learning. That means that instead of being exposed to theory and then being shown examples, if you are shown examples and are able to recognize by yourself the patterns, the retention of the concept will be much higher. At this stage, the input method is also different. You are ready to consume native content, like movies or series, videos or podcasts. But it's essential to take an active approach to it. You are not ready to just listen and enjoy. You must be careful, you must take notes, you must rewind, you must pause, you must ponder, you must rephrase. You have to take an active approach towards content consumption. I'm going to go over the advanced approach very briefly because I specialize in beginners and intermediates. If you're advanced, you must look into a conversation about complex topics, environmental difficulties, like a bad signal in the phone, a group conversation, or a noisy place. For grammar, you must look into syntax analysis. And when it comes to content consumption, you could try with comedy or literature. Also, the last step will be accent reduction and intonation. Thank you very much for watching my approach. I will appreciate any feedback or advice or comments, and I'll see you on the next one.